one thing that's sad and dispiriting about the trajectory of guys like David French or Russell Moore is they blew their wad, so to speak. They blew whatever credibility they might have had to be a thoughtful, authentic, conservative voice against Trumpism. Because I do think we need that in the evangelical right. That is important. I am concerned about Trumpism. I am concerned with the cult of Trump, people who are just doing some of their own conscience binding, to be honest. I mean, Meg talks rightly about leftists binding consciences, but I've seen people on the right do that as well. Like, you have to vote Trump. This is the most important election of our lifetimes since the last one,
Since the last 20.
Right, exactly. So we do need to talk about that. That is a conversation that needs to happen. But the problem is that these guys were, so prideful and so, eager to get those bylines at the Atlantic or New York Times or whatever, and get on to Ezra Klein's podcast or whatever. They turned it into just repeated punching down. And look at these stupid rubes. Look at these people. I am so much better than they are. I am so much smarter, week after week, over and over again, until nobody listens to them anymore, with good reason. Yeah. So I try it. In this article I write, No Country for Old Conservatives, I'm attempting to be the change I would like to see here, to try to articulate the authentic conservative response to Trumpism, with respect for friends of mine, people I know who are still going to vote for Trump, with varying degrees of enthusiasm, but just saying, I don't think you have to do this. I think there's another way. I think there's another authentically conservative way.
Yeah, well, lay out these. Or go ahead, Lenny, and then we'll have.
I was just going to say, first of all, I agree with this. I think this is really an important point. I think that in any as we see our culture recede from its Christian moorings, it isn't a surprise that the overall moral milieu dips. So, everybody's got right. There's like a bell curve. You got the vast majority in the top, and then you've got the nuts on both ends. And one of the things that happens is as the Christian standard sinks, as morality continues to go down, then everything, that bell curve, sinks along with it.
Yeah, so Aaron Wren is really good on this.
Yeah. It's not a surprise to me that and I told my wife 10 years ago, I said, you will start to see more school shootings, more public. I said, it's an inevitability, because the one or two nuts who did it before are now, the 1% is now 5% of the population, right? It's as that sinking happens, you're going to get more and more people in a group who's capable of and desirous of doing that. And so when we see this, it's, Paul tells us to pray for Nero, right? Romans 13 was written when Nero was in power, and the government, he says, is ordained by God to bear the sword for a reason. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you think Nero is God's gift to humanity either. He's burning Christians alive. So there, I think we have to understand that when we look at our current situation, all we can do is make a decision based on where more godliness can flourish. And in my view, it's easily clear that godliness can flourish more in a administration where you have rightward individuals than an administration where you have an entire leftist organization. I just have to argue it that way. So we have to be careful that it's not, the guy down the street has a banner that says, even my dog won't vote for Kamala Harris. It's like, okay, I get it, but I can't put a Trump flag in front of my house. I just can't do that, because it's not that I'm supporting Trump. It's that I'm supporting godliness. And that's the least egregious way I can get there. So that's the way I approach it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Bethel, why don't you lay out there's kind of three approaches, but then there's a fourth approach that you lay out in the article, which of course we'll link to as well. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So there's the, the yes, MAGA, Trump is my president, he's my hero, here's the second coming of Ronald Reagan approach, which it's just painful to watch. And there are people who are dear to me, people I know and love, who really sincerely believe that, and God bless them. They're very wrong. And I hope another candidate comes along who deserves them, unlike Trump. There's that approach, and then there's the David French elitist sellout approach, to where he's gone all the way around and he's now literally stumping for Kamala. So the evangelicals for Harris people, who are like so anti-Trump that's all that they're about. They will literally do anything as long as it's anti-Trump. That's pure leftist negative epistemology in action. Then there's what I call the transactional approach. You could call it a pragmatic approach, where it's like, look, I know Trump is not the second coming of Ronald Reagan. I have no illusions. I don't think he's a wonderful guy. I'm kind of bothered by some of this pro-choice stuff that he's been saying, but look, he's not Kamala. So Rod Dreher lays this out in an article. He just lays out all the ways that Trump is not Kamala, is better than Kamala. And it's like, look, he's a stopgap. He's not the best guy, but he's the best we have at the moment. We can just kind of get him in. Then maybe later we'll get somebody better, like J.D. Vance or somebody like that. But for now, we just have to stop Kamala from getting in there. That's the number one priority. So vote for Trump as the emergency pragmatic measure of the Flight 93.
It's the lesser of two evils.
Lesser of two evils, right. And we've heard this for years. And then there's my approach, which is just saying, actually, I think it's important to have standards. I don't think we should just endlessly run the lesser of two evils argument. Because at a certain point, it's like, what's left? What are we still conserving at this point? And if we just kind of endlessly revise and revise and revise, lower the bar, what message are we sending? We're sending the message, you can take us for granted. You can count on us. Where else are we going to go? We owe our vote to you, prima facie. So we're just going to keep indefinitely giving it to you. And there's basically nothing you could do as long as you're a little better than the Democrats. There's basically nothing you could do. And the Democrats are always going to be worse, okay? They're so insane. They're so flat out demonic. You could do that. You could play that game till the cows come home. But at a certain point, you have to stop. I think you have to stop making your vote depend on just how bad the Democrats are and examine, but what are my actual standards for what I would like to see in a conservative candidate? I think you should consider that.
It's a really good point. It's very well thought out. Lenny and Logan, we just did a podcast on this, exactly this topic, about a month ago when Trump, when they took the pro-life messaging out of the 2025 agenda, and when first time it's been missing from the Republican plank in like 30 years. Yeah. So Lenny, I mean, let's talk about what Bethel just laid out for us. I think it's important.
Well, one of the things, and I think you and I have talked about it before, is how do we do two things? How do we try to, again, and mine isn't, I've kind of come to the conclusion of it's not simply voting of the lesser of two evils, it's voting for the greatest good. How can God, in what way can my vote make God's plan flourish more than it would otherwise? So it's opting for the greatest good, which if you're a moral philosopher, that there's a distinction between those two things. Now, Bethel's in a swing state, so she may not have this option, but I'm not. I live in California. I could stand on my head and hold my breath, and it doesn't matter. California's electoral votes are going to go for Harris. There's just no way around it. But what you can do is the California Republicans, the evangelicals, if they were to say write in Ron DeSantis, here's an individual who would be and a phenomenal president, much more capable of taking on certain aspects, much more, he's got a grasp of the issues. If we were to write in him, again, it's not going to affect our vote. We're not going to, oh, Trump would have won California if you wouldn't. No, that's not going to happen. But if we write in Ron DeSantis and the poll results come back, they go, do you see 15% of California Republicans had a write-in vote instead of Trump? What that does is that tells the RNC, hey, maybe we can't take every evangelical vote for granted. Maybe we do have to think. Again, in swing states, it might be different. But if you're in a non-swing state and you do this, it may actually send the message that you're trying to send is we care about these issues. How do you say I care about pro-life and you don't necessarily have my vote just because you have an R next to your name and you can say whatever you want? That's, I mean, pragmatically, that's the only thing I can think of that could pull enough strings to have people stand up and notice.
Show some dissidence against what the RNC, the direction they're taking.
By the way, David French is in a non-swing state as well, which makes his whole thing especially weird and just look like political theater, basically.
Logan, you got any thoughts on this? Being the mega Trumpite that you are?
Never went all the way. No. I would probably say I'm like in between 1 and 3 on Bethel's 4 categories, because I do think it's like an enthusiastic vote for the context that he's in. I think he's a good wrecking ball for the political process, and he's done a good job doing that. If it was dismantling the presidential debate commission, if it was the sort of dismantling the kinds of debates we were having with the Republican Party that were like sort of just fake debates here, like a couple questions, everyone gets 30 seconds. Now it's more like, is it for better or for worse? I'm not sure. I do appreciate sort of removing, in a way, scraping away this mask. And Bethel in an article actually notes that he will reform in his image, which I think is the scary part. But I think when we talk about the moral decline of sort of like the society, and I think this is why it makes it controversial, is that I don't know if the church, like, there's a moral decline, but I think we like to believe the narrative is the church is fighting for the moral spirit of the culture, and it's losing, and it's a long, tough battle, and it's going darker and darker. I think what's actually happening is that the church has just sort of caved on its moral issues, broadly speaking. Not necessarily, not a 50-50 church. I'm going to go after in this comment, but then what we're seeing is society realizing, oh, we can do this. Oh, we can do that. Oh, we can say these things. And there's really actually no one in the Christian world that's going to do anything of substance to push back. And it's not to say that we need to weaponize the church. It's to say, is the church capable of producing people that can govern at all? Like, are these the kinds of virtues that are being produced? And yeah, the American political process, like any political process, is gruesome and hard and requires like a high level of ability or competency. Like, even if you don't like Trump, he has a high level of competency in the political process. The question is, can the church produce someone like that? And I don't think it's outside the church's moral duties to avoid that. I don't think they have to do that. I think they can produce people like that. The question is, where do they come from, or how can they come